Hello, we're live, by the way. I'm just telling Sam how I am. Uh, I came out, I started writing a new novel back in sort of March, and then I got about 40,000 words in, and my mum died, and so I had to stop. And I thought I can carry on, and I couldn't. So then I said
Oh,
to my characters, "Look, I'm gonna go out to France for a month, and I'm gonna write it there." But when on my way sort of here, I thought, well, a month is not long enough to write a first draft by anyone's imagination, especially if I hadn't really started properly at all. So then I thought, well, I'll write it as a novella. So basically like a treatment for a novel,
mm,
but as a complete 30,000 word novella,
okay.
which means that I can be very tight on structure, right? Because it's kind of easier because there are literally how many chapters are there? I think there are 15 chapters. It's 30,000 words. Each chapter's about 2,000 words,
Hmm.
right? So the first act is around 3 chapters and the last act is around 4 chapters, and then the rest is kind of in the middle. I could really I interviewed Kit Duvall recently, and she really made me sit up and think about my total lack of structure in terms of my planning. Like, I understand all of my edits, and I've just got notes on another novel. They're always about structure. They're never really about content. They're about actually the third. You don't really lift off till the third chapter, and you know what I mean. So,
Hmm.
you're looking thoughtful. Is this something you meet with authors, or is this something in your own work?
Oh, it's not something I meet particularly with our authors, but I think because by the time they get to us, they've done that stuff
Yeah,
and had those battles to quite a large degree. Um, my own stuff is a bit different because it's mainly nonfiction, but
yeah,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and it's always so difficult. I mean, ideally, everyone would just sit down at the beginning and write till the end, and some people can do that, but on the whole, I guess it's best to have a plan.
well, I never have, and I think I was really berating myself this morning. I thought, why has it taken me 5 novels to plan, really have a plot structure before I really get into it? It's taken 5 novels. Normally, I just seat of my pants it because
Mm.
I kind of know, I kind of have this, you know what I mean? I was thinking this morning, I don't know if Shirley Jackson planned. Maybe she did. Maybe I would imagine the greats were just somehow they had that gift of structure. They just knew the rhythms. And so I was berating myself this morning, like, listen, you're fucking arrogant. Like, finally, like, you know, um, and it's generally, but do you never get, I mean, obviously you don't give notes unless you've got a deal on the table, but do you never work with an author in terms of like actually, like, do you ever do big structural changes, or have you never come across that in editing?
Well, I do other kinds of editing as well. So
Right,
I do quite a lot of editing with people who are starting things. I do some stuff with Jericho writers,
right.
and there we do talk about structure a lot. I mean, the truth is every writer is different, and things
Yeah,
work differently for different people. I know that sounds very bland, but I mean
yeah.
it's true. So I've got to say it. So it really depends. But yeah, planning things out is, in my experience, very helpful. So long as you can be flexible with your plan, and sometimes
Yeah.
be prepared to go against it as well if events necessitate that. Um, what can I say to you that's helpful? Well, it sounds like you've kind of cracked it. I mean, writing is learning, and it sounds like you've got
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
good
I mean,
point
I
with it.
think I've cracked it with this novella because
Mm.
I was just forced myself to do the thing I find so difficult. I mean, I find, writing is as difficult as anyone else finds it, but that's not kind of where I struggle. Where I struggle is that I don't necessarily want to write super commercial books, but I want to learn that commercial structure so that I can then move away from it again. And that very classic 3 act, uh, arc is a classic commercial structure. And I've really forced myself to practice it on this
Okay.
novella as a kind of as a practice.
Have you been reading about the hero's journey and all of that
Well,
stuff?
I did years ago. Do you know what I mean? I did years ago and ignored it. But but I've just had notes on something else, and yet again, I've had this with two novels. One time I realised, and this time someone else has pointed out that actually the third chapter is where I should start, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And
Yeah.
I never see it because I think it takes me, it takes me a run up to kind of lift off, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's natural. That's fine.
Yeah,
I think one of the most frequent bits of editing, and I've spoken to other editing colleagues about this, is, cut the first chapter, cut the first
yeah,
page. And
just cut it out. Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of where you're clearing your throat and trying to work out how things happen. And
yeah,
yeah, and it's always my experience when I'm doing journalism, particularly, I used to do a weekly thing for The Guardian.
mm,
I'd write it on a Friday. I'd spend most of Friday morning trying to figure out how to start, and writing and rewriting and getting everything wrong. Eventually, I'd, you know, beat something out of myself and then write the rest pretty quickly, and then go back and delete that painful thing that took more hours than all the other stuff.
yeah.
And that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the bit. I didn't mean to start talking about this, but I'll carry on until we've finished. I think that's the bit I find is that very first bit is often stuff that I really love, but it's not actually moving on the page.
Mm.
And so I've really noticed that more clearly than at any other time
Mhm.
with this next. So yeah, my God, we carry on learning. And in fact, I was going to get to this later, but I'll get to this now. I always find I fall off a cliff after I finished a draft. How do you handle your writers when they're having existential angst about the fucking point?
Um, I mean, I don't know if I have to handle them particularly. They're very, very sophisticated, and I mean, no. I think, what can I tell you from an editor's point of view? I mean, I'm very aware that being edited is not easy necessarily,
Mm,
and I hope all my edits are sensitive and helpful. But even so, it's kind of strange getting your writing back and seeing suggestions on your deathless prose. And sometimes I'll say, it's all right to hate this
mm,
verse, for instance, and it's natural to spend a week kind of thinking what an outrage it is that I should suggest this kind of stuff, and then come back and read it again, see what actually makes sense, and then
yeah,
we'll kind of we'll have the negotiation, because of course as an editor I'm not right about everything is another thing. But I mean, in terms of the existential angst, I don't. I mean, it's writing is difficult, and it takes its toll on people sometimes, often, and um, speak in general terms. I know some of our authors have written books that are mentally hugely demanding,
mm,
but emotionally exhausting. And getting to the end of that and handing it in and doing the edits, it's a lot. So, you know,
mm,
um, and what can we do to help is, it's not a straightforward question, because, I mean, the truth is, uh, so there's a wonderful book called Stet by Diana Athill, which I would recommend to anyone who wants to know about how editing works. She's just
yeah,
wonderful storyteller.
mm,
She's It's mainly about her time with Andre Deutsch, which is a fantastic post-war publisher. Her insights into editing are just amazing. So there's a bit where she talks about the wide Sargasso Sea and the suggestion
mm,
she made there, which, if you've read that book and
mm.
love it as I do, and then you see, oh, she suggested that, and that is the thing that makes the book just kind of come open. And
He edited the Wide Sargasso Sea.
yeah,
Jesus,
yeah,
I had no idea. Okay, I'm gonna have to read
yeah.
that. I mean, I've
So
read Sargasso, but I haven't read her book on
oh,
editing.
yeah, oh, it's amazing. I mean, her relationship with Jean Rhys is very interesting as well. And I will come to my point soon, but her suggestion,
Yeah,
if you do know the book, was
I
that
do. Yeah.
Rochester and Bertha, actually, there should have been a chance of a connection between them before everything went wrong. And that just kind of
Okay.
just raises the stakes and makes it
Yeah.
so fascinating. It's brilliant. Anyway,
Wow.
one of the things she says
That's
in the book
amazing.
is that you're always told you should never become friends with your writers because it's a business and it becomes difficult and it becomes fraught. Next sentence, but of course you always do. And no, that's the thing, the writers,
Yeah.
especially because Galley Beggar is so small and we just are very lucky in that we publish books that we love.
Mm.
And if you love the book, chances are you're going to like the writer and you're going to be, simpatico and have things in
Mhm.
common. So I I like them all. And so I hope we can talk things through. And if that situation ever arises, I mean, I suppose the other truth is a lot of writing, as you know, is suffering and struggling in the dark alone. And there are things you just got to work through by yourself, I guess. And it's part of what am I going to call it? One of the challenges of this calling.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to notes, is knowing which notes to take, and also knowing that there's I don't know if you know the podcast. It's called The Screenwriting Life. They have a kind of saying on there about notes, and it always goes when you get notes. It goes "fuck you," and then it goes "fuck me." And then it's like, okay, now let's get on with it. So
Yeah.
there's this process. Like, first of all, you're like, how fucking dare you? You don't get it. These are just like, this quickly runs through the mind, And
Yeah.
then it's like, actually, I'm a disaster. And then everyone takes a deep breath and then you get on with it. So that bit, I would imagine you having edited for so long, your authors are going to go through, no matter who you are, everybody goes through that. Whether you go through it in a 30 seconds or 3 weeks, everybody goes through that little triptych of mental gymnastics before you get on with the actual work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, generally it happens sooner than that. But, and I know
Yeah.
from being edited as well, very often my first reaction is, no way. And
Yeah.
then,
I know.
and then I start to see the logic. And, but the other thing I will say is that, my experience from being edited and doing a lot of journalism and seeing things change is that an awful lot of the time that the people who can read it more cleanly and, with that extra distance that I don't have and the extra knowledge they bring to it, they do fantastic things.
Mm.
Sometimes they are wrong as well, though. And
Yeah.
there are a few pieces of mine that are still available. I'm like, why was that changed? So,
Yeah.
I've always got to remember that too. Sometimes
Mm.
it's right that writers say no to my edits, and I'm grateful when they take them as a result as
Yeah.
well.
And I think one of the other things that makes Galley stand out as a press is that it always strikes me that the work that hits the shelves eventually is never written or never edited for market. It's edited, right? And I mean that as the highest compliment. It's edited for the best that piece of work can be.
Well,
Because
thank
I
you.
know, and every writer knows who's had any kind of dealings with, the bigger kind of, big five or any of those. Obviously, we've all had notes around making it more commercial, making it all that kind of stuff. Is that how have you kept that? How have you kept the faith?
Um, well, what can I say? I mean, suppose the first thing is, I do want our books to sell and
No, of
for our writers to
course.
do well. But I thank that.
What's your priority?
Yeah,
Because
no, I take what you said as a compliment, and
yeah,
I'm
good. It's
very
meant as a
very
compliment.
grateful for it. So
Yeah, yeah,
thank you,
yeah.
because um, we don't think about the market. I mean, it would be mad for us to do that.
Mm,
In all sorts of ways. We edit for readers,
mm,
and we edit for, I guess we have an image of the the ideal reader in a way, or we try and think about, well, what's going to make sense to this person. And we're very lucky in that we have, a lot of subscribers to the press and a lot of good contact with people who appreciate what we do. So we kind of know who they are,
Mm.
and we know that they're smart, and we know that they're prepared to put the necessary work in. It's when you're kind of asking them to do unnecessary work or something that they, make connections that they can't possibly make, and it's that kind of thing. And that's where you have to edit some of the time.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm going to put it in very grandiose terms because why not?
Go on.
I suppose, I hope that, maybe we're not editing for the immediate market, but we are editing for well, I often say to my writers, it's a long game.
Yeah.
And I hope that their books are going to endure, and people are going to enjoy reading them in 10 years, 50 years more. And, they've got to be robust in that way that they're still going to make sense. And editing for market maybe is sometimes a negative in that, because, you're talking about
because it's so fast moving.
Yeah.
Right.
And exactly. It's ephemeral. Yeah.
And the proof is clearly in the back catalogue of Galley and the many prizes and shortlists that your authors have been on. And the fact that it allows you to break ground. So you're never following. You're always, on or ahead of your own curve, which is what makes the books you publish so good.
Well,
right?
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, thank you. Sorry about the barking dog, by the way. He started just as you finished that lovely compliment. He's chorusing his
set him
approval.
up. I called him earlier and said, bark every time I give Sam a compliment. That's it makes you stand up in terms of presses who are not following anybody.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I suppose the thing to say about that is, that's because of the authors that we've been lucky enough to publish.
Yeah.
And, we can only do that kind of stuff because they are writing those kinds of books.
Yeah. And on that, I'm gonna dive into the Polari.
Oh my God.
Shall we?
Okay.
Sam, do you want to, before I ask what I want to ask, do you want to just tell those listening, give them a quick, brief summary of the Polari Prize and the catastrophe that said it?
Yeah, okay. Well, so the Polari Prize is this fantastic prize that's been going, I think, for more than 10 years. I don't have all the facts in front of me. Run by, there's a few people involved, but one of them is Paul Burston, who's been a real stalwart of the literary community and of the LGBTQ plus community. And it's done great work over the years. Really good books have won it. It's a really good way of promoting different authors and authors who might not get attention in other ways. And essentially, it's for they've got to be so careful with all these labels. I don't know how they label themselves now, but for gay writers essentially, and it's great. Right. And really good books have won in the past, but this year the prize was not awarded, tragically, because of a controversy surrounding the fact that John Boyne, so the author of the Boy in a Striped Pajamas, was on the long list, and then people started objecting to his presence there because they didn't agree with his some things he said about trans issues, and it was just a whole mess. To me as an outsider, it felt cruel to John Boyne. The way everyone not everyone, sorry, the way a lot of people rounded on him, and open letters were going around, which is always, I've seen that happen in The Guardian. It's nasty, and it's nasty for the person, the human being who is the subject of those. So on a human level, I kind of didn't like it, but I think it's the principle that upsets me more of the fact that, it's a prize for literature. It's not a prize for what a good person John Boyne is. And I don't know anything about him. I imagine we probably would butt heads about all kinds of things, and I don't agree with him about all kinds of things. But that's not the point. It's a literary prize. You're not judging his humanity, and also there are freedom of speech implications for this, and the publishing community has been not great at this over the last few years. I kind of thought it was almost over here in the UK. But there have been lots of incidences of people refusing to work on people's books because they don't agree with the author, and all of that kind of thing. And the thing that kind of sticks in my craw is to quite a large extent, these are people whose views I tend to side with on most things, but that's not the issue. The issue is that you've got to protect people's right to say things. And, as a publisher, I think you should be open to publishing things you don't agree with. I mean, otherwise, what happens when, the shoe is on the other foot? That's always the thing. And to truly protect freedom of speech, you also have to protect, the freedom of people you don't agree with to speak. And you only have to look at what's happening in America to see how true that is, where it is the right wing at the moment who are in ascendancy and are doing terrible things with freedom of speech. But an awful lot of the language they're using and all of these things, they've learned it from the culture war nonsense that people who claim to be left wing and even claim to be liberal, although it's not liberal as I understand it. The kind of things they say now in order to ban. I was just been doing a class on Oryx and Craig by Margaret Atwood.
Yeah.
One of the most
good
banned
ending.
books.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a good ending. It's a great book.
It's a good book. Is it banned? I didn't have no idea.
Banned all over the place. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I had a few issues with the book, but it's still fascinating. And
yeah,
it's Margaret Atwood. It's banned all over the United States, and there's this really draconian legislation in Utah, for instance, where it's on a list of 13 prescribed books. And if librarians, school boards, and teachers give them to pupils, they're in real legal jeopardy. They will face harsh penalties. But my point is, you can go on and you can crazily, the person who was leading this charge in Utah has put the reasoning behind it, the legislation, the bill is all online. So actually, including the weird excerpts from Oryx and Craig that he deems pornographic, which are taken, of course, completely out of context. And now, if you're in school in Utah, the only bit of Oryx and Craig that you can pretty much access are the bits that he's deemed pornographic because he's put them online. But my point is that very often he has echoed the kind of language about people being harmed and sensitivities and all this bullshit that we're so familiar with. This nonsense about a book possibly being radioactive in that kind of way. He's learned that from previous campaigns. I guess it reached a kind of peak in 2020. Anyway, I've gone on a very long excursus here, and I suppose coming back to the Polari Prize, I mean, I hope it comes back next year, and but it's a mess. It has bad implications for freedom of speech, and it's sad. I mean, it feels so much of this stuff, it so often feels like people standing around someone in a playground and pointing at them. It's that kind of instinct. And I feel, in a way, that's what's happened to John Boyne. And, maybe that is putting it very strongly, because I know, I'm sure an awful lot of people, they have real good reasons for objecting to what he says, and they feel it very emotionally and, outraged by it, and they want to do good themselves, but I don't think on this occasion that they are.
I wonder how much difference there would have been if he hadn't published very publicly come out, use the word TERF to identify himself, come out publicly with a photograph of him in a pub with J.K. Rowling, all of that. I wonder what difference it would have made if he hadn't, which, putting our judgment of whether he should have done that aside, but just whether if he hadn't done that, whether it would have reached that level of public response. But I think it's so fascinating as well that, and I've heard this. Sorry, go on.
I think I think you're probably right about that, and he no doubt antagonized people. But the implication of what you're saying is that people shouldn't express their opinions and should be afraid to.
Yeah. Well, I'm putting aside whether I think he should or shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, sure.
Do you know what I mean? But just whether him doing that, whether we see that as cause and effect, or we don't at all. And do you know what I mean? It's like because it forced the thing that really, and I wanted to ask you about actually as an editor, that if you'd had somebody on that, had an author on that list, because I was imagining being an author on that list, and it was my debut, and I had worked, or maybe it wasn't, maybe it was my 5th novel, and I had worked my fucking ass off, and I dreamt of being on a list, and finally I was shortlisted for the Polari, and I've got all kinds of opinions which you and I might not lock horns over, and the whole thing is absolutely fine, but then this happens, and I am forced to publicly declare left or right, in black or up or down. Do you know what I mean? And I might think, well, look, I've got all kinds of personal opinions about this, which everybody might applaud, but I don't want to declare. I don't want to put, and it's that bit. It's the forcing because loads of writers. So just for everybody listening who doesn't know, loads of writers, I imagine there was 1 or 2 who kind of led the charge. They pulled out of the prize, and it forced an issue, didn't it, Sam? Where if you didn't pull out, you were signalling that you were on his side, and if you pulled out, you were on someone else's side. And it's that forcing people into a position which really, I just thought, fucking hell, something's off here.
Yeah,
you're right. This is not
awful.
okay.
Yeah, and you're quite right, because I'd been talking about John Boyne as a victim in this, but all the other writers as well. It's just awful for them, and it should, as you say, it should be such a great thing, and it is. They've done really well to get. It's a prestigious prize, and they always have good judges, and then to have that not only swept away, but then to have your own politics investigated, and to be forced to take a side on an issue that is so, had already kind of was exploding all over the place. It's really difficult. I don't know. Like, fortunately, I wasn't in that position as an editor.
But if you had an author in that, what would you? And they came to you and said, "Sam, what do I do?"
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. I think so often for an author's protection, the thing you say is keep your head down. Don't say anything. And one of the big rules about prizes on the whole is never complain, for good reason. But telling a writer not to say something is also, it's almost a contradiction in terms. So that they're the people who are supposed to have opinions for us and to help us think through things. So telling them not to do that thinking is contrary to the whole raison d'etre in a way. But honestly, I suppose I don't know what I'd do, because I wasn't there, luckily. And I imagine there are quite a few editors who. The other thing is, when you are involved, it's very hard not to get emotional and angry. And so I think the first thing I'd say is, okay, well, hopefully the first thing I'd say is, let's take 24 hours. Let's see if we can take a breath, calm down, and see where we are.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hard one.
It's a really tough one, and I'm here at I sit on the Good Law Project on their development board,
Oh wow.
and we hear a lot there as well. I had a really fascinating conversation just the other day with somebody there about how the liberal left has just paved the way paved the way for the behavior that we're now seeing all over the place. And it's
Yeah.
so, I mean, irony doesn't cover it, does it, frankly? But that's, this sense that I can't be harmed and upset. I hope we swing back into a slightly somewhere between pull your socks up and I hear you. I hope we swing back into some middle ground. And then also the endless, and so it will be a conversation between the artist and the art.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, these are always fundamental questions. But I suppose
Mm.
one of the big problems of our time um, is these polar extremes of the illiberal right and the illiberal left, and everyone in the middle just being kind of squeezed and not really heard because those two are shouting so loud. Um, yeah, I guess my hope is for people who can understand that, maybe someone's got a different opinion to you doesn't make them necessarily wrong. What you should do is talk about it instead of yelling at each other to shut up all the time. Maybe
Mm.
that will become more prevalent, but that feels quite optimistic at the moment. But um, yes, it's always surprising how similar the people who hate each other the most become. They become mirror image of each other.
Yeah. And the banning, I mean, I read a terrifying article the other day on the amount of banned books, certainly in America. And then I think there was a case recently in England was it in Dorset or somewhere?
Yeah, someone tried to get the "Hate You Give" taken off a.
Well,
Uh,
they succeeded.
it succeeded. It's awful. Yeah,
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 temporarily. I don't know whether there's now a great move by various parents to put it back on again, but
yeah. To their credit,
mm,
yeah, and to the
mm,
kids. The
who just said, we're fine.
yeah,
What do you think we're made of?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but yeah, that was worrying. That feels like one of the first cases in the
Yeah.
UK where someone has tried to do that. So for people who don't know, I think it was a parent, but of course he's also a Tory councillor who objected to the UK for all kinds of, seemed to me, pretty spurious reasons, failing to understand the nature of novels and saying it
And the
was,
intelligence of the people around him, the young people. I mean,
yeah,
there was a failure all over the place, wasn't there?
yeah, really, yeah. But I suppose the biggest failure was as soon as he raised this objection, it seems to have been taken off the reading list
Yeah.
instead of the school educators who know what they're doing. These are trained people. Most of the teachers I've met are, um, I'm so impressed by them, and
Yeah.
so they should. I would hope they have the confidence to stand their ground. And maybe it was just
Mm.
that particular school, but let's see how this kind of thing develops. And this is a good case. I mean, I haven't read the book, but from the descriptions of it, I don't think I'd particularly like it that much myself. I mean, I might be wrong, and maybe I should read it before commenting further. But I still feel like, God, you've got to defend it. And the author, in fact, if people want to look it up, she kind of made a few comments about how troubling this decision is, and she made a very good case for herself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's coming here to the UK as well.
Yeah. And I think zero in a bit on that, on the educators and the Polari Prize judges and their decision, both cases, to not stand their ground, to give way. And I don't know whether we can put them in the same bucket. The school is probably a little bit easier in the sense that it's a small school in Dartmoor or somewhere, and yeah, these one shouting parent. I mean, I can understand that school board would have thought, shit, we don't want to be accused of. So this is the quickest way to get rid of it. But of course it
Yeah.
wasn't, because by doing that, it was in The Guardian.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, now here, wait for it, I'm going to judge. If they stand by, if they had said, all right, mate, we know you're in a fuss, but we're actually going to keep it in and just let the breeze run through, it probably wouldn't have got in The Guardian. Can the
Yeah,
same
I
be
mean,
said of
again,
the Polari, do you think?
yeah, let me come back, because I want to defend the
Mm.
scheme slightly now, because it might have ended up in
Okay.
the Telegraph, and maybe that's so, maybe they were caught between a rock and a
Or The
hard place.
Spectator, yeah.
With the Polari, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of how the decisions were made, so take everything I say. Well, take it with a pinch of salt anyway. But this one, health warning. But I get the impression that they didn't have much chance by the end, because so many writers had dropped out and it become such a mess. And
Right.
people like us had been discussing it so much, and what would have happened to the person who eventually won the prize? What would have happened to the shortlist? I mean, John Boyne kind of said, "Don't put me on the shortlist," I think, but
Yeah, he did. To his credit, he said, "Okay, just I'm clearly a hot potato. Take me out." But by then it was too late, or it had become so shouty. It had become a cause rather than an ideology.
Well, a circular firing squad. Everyone was just taking each other out. So,
Yeah. Okay, so their ability, in your witness of the facts as they landed on the table, they didn't really. There was no opportunity to let it blow over. Do you think, in the broader sense, because this won't be the last, well, I hope it's the last, but it may well not be. Do you think, in a broader sense, standing one's ground in these kind of very shouty, very divisive, upsetting, and I think, obviously the tricky thing is that within all of this, there are issues which are close to lots of people's hearts and upsetting. Do you think it's possible to just be the calmest person in the boat?
not always. No. And I think maybe this comes back to kind of what we were talking about before. It's important to try and be sympathetic and empathetic and not always be blaming people. And these decisions are really hard. And essentially, I think the thing about, by the time the Polari Prize thing had blown up, there were no right decisions to make. Everything was going to be a bad decision, I suppose. And it's great when people do stand up, and I'm always very grateful to them. And there are important principles to defend, but people always also have their own lives to protect and everything else. So it's not always strictly possible.
Yeah. Yeah, complicated. I don't know. I mean, I was imagining, what would I do if I were on that list? And, it's so dependent on where you are in your career, and that terrible threat of being labeled, and how long do labels last, and all of these elements. And that's the tragedy, isn't it, really, that art, I mean, there's an element where art and literature, there's always been politicized, that, there are writers writing big political novels, and we're talking about big political social change and things, but still, to have one bring down the other is it's nothing. It's a tragedy, right? I mean,
Yeah. And being the one who kind of sticks your head above of the parapet also means you're the one who gets shot first. So, and particularly with prizes, I mean, I was talking before, the rule generally is you don't complain, for very good reasons. Because, it's very often, the judges have, in all sincerity, done the best job that they possibly can. It's the first and most important thing. And, but, it just looks and feels and sounds really bad. But I have complained about a prize in the past. I've complained about the Booker Prize, because I thought it got to a point where it was so wrong and so unjust, and it also felt like they were that they not the organisation, but a couple of the judges had pretty much taken the piss out of our author. And so I did say something on that occasion, and
publicly or
yeah, publicly, yeah. I wrote a piece in the Times Literary Supplement about it. So I don't.
what was your complaint in a
Yeah, I'm wary of reopening old wounds because
Okay.
it's in the past, and I'm also, I think that the Booker Prize is a really great institution. I used to write about it a lot as a journalist, and then they don't get things right, in my opinion, all the time, but it's certainly been wonderful for raising the profile of some really important books. But
you brought it up.
I shouldn't have. I mean, there were all kinds of kind of complications, but we had a book on the short list, Ducks Report by Lucy
Yeah,
Ellman,
I remember. Yeah.
which and I should put my cards on the table, and that book is a masterpiece. It was the best book on the list. I have absolute confidence. So that does colour things. My bias towards Lucy and love affair and that book.
Well, you should be biased towards her. You're her editor, so
okay,
that's allowed.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay, as long as we kind of people are aware of my interest in that. But there was a rule was broken for a start, which was a big problem. But also, so they gave the book to two winners, which shouldn't have happened because there'd been a rule change in the past, and they were very kind of what I mean is Peter Florence, particularly the chair of the judges, were very cavalier about this stuff, in my opinion, and he said a few things at the ceremony that were distasteful. This was in the first Trump term, and he was making all these awful jokes about journalists. We kind of let that ride. It felt weird. It felt wrong. But then the next day, one of the judges published an article in The Guardian talking about, essentially saying how they had judged things, and talking about how do you weigh up the career of I can't quite remember, so I'm going to give, these aren't necessarily the right examples, but say Margaret Atwood was on the list and Salman Rushdie. How do you compare their two careers? And how do you... It's not supposed to be about the careers. It's really fundamentally important that it is about the books. So she was saying to everyone they had thrown out all the rules and made it about personalities and made it about their kind of long-term record. And it was also pretty clear that they never read. Lucy actually has a really substantial, really good backlist, but they didn't know about that. They hadn't taken that into account, for instance. Salman Rushdie, a guy who has, in very literal ways, laid his life on the line for his books, and has written. He's the author of Midnight's Children, for God's sake, like one of the greatest books of the 20th century. And so, but you're saying his career is not as important as, and so all these kind of questions start coming in that just make the whole thing, it felt farcical. And it felt, especially after that kind of cavalier controversy and everything else, and then the way it felt like our author had been on this list and not had a chance from the start, essentially, and nor had the other people on the shortlist. And there were kind of quite a few behind the scenes things that we don't need to get into that made us think the whole thing was a bit of a fix. But anyway, you can see it, the way I talk about it now, I'm still quite angry about it. So I published an article in the Times Literary Supplement, which is still available online if people want to look at it.
Read it.
I explain things hopefully there a bit more clearly than I am now, and helped by the wonderful editors at the TLS, of course. I'm coming back to editorial. Anyway, so I am the person who complained, but I didn't want to be, and I don't regret complaining because I think I was right. And also the thing that was really nice, I can't name them, but other people who were involved in it said quietly to me that, thank you for doing that. You did the right thing. It shouldn't have turned out like this year. And, I think the fact that the complaint did go over ground hopefully means that procedures have been better ever since, and there have been no, that I'm aware of, similar issues in the year since, and they've chosen some wonderful winners, and everything's back on track, I hope. So, it was just a strange year, essentially.
Yeah. Was it a slight whoops reveal that when they revealed in The Guardian, when she revealed in The Guardian that they were looking at career and not book? I mean, surely that's an obvious, it's a clear breaking of the ethos and point and rules of the Booker, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, it was pretty
pretty shocking.
It was so
To be that
blatant.
blasé.
Yeah, someone had to say something, and I suppose being a small press, it's very often, it's our curse that we're the ones who have to say something, but it's also a privilege because we're in a position where we can say that, because there's just two of us. We don't have to have 200 meetings to decide whether we should do it. If it's okay with Ellie, it's okay with me. Ellie's my co-director and much better. So it was, we were the people who were able to say something, so we did, and I hope it was the right thing. And the other thing is that I suppose it's a huge thing for me personally. Most people, as you've demonstrated, don't know, or really, it's inside baseball stuff, really. So hopefully it's all blown over. Maybe I've just brought it back to life again. But
you brought it back to life, and I'm going to read the article. Yeah, no, I didn't. I knew about. I remember the prize that year, and I remember Duck's new report going up for it, and I remember the two winners and all of that. But I didn't know. I didn't see your article. So yeah, I suppose in my echelon, it didn't reach my shores. Were there any negative knockbacks from speaking out? You personally?
Twitter was still a thing then, and there were a few people quite naturally saying, "Yeah, you sour grapes," and I understand that reaction.
I see.
But
okay.
to give the Booker Prize Foundation people were actually, they can't say anything against their judges, and it put them in a really invidious position. But they were really good. They brought us in for meetings afterwards, and they spoke to us about the things that had gone wrong. So, I imagine they weren't delighted with us, but they were very good about making sure that it wouldn't be a problem for us in the future, I guess. So credit to them as well. They thought about it and took it on board, I think, and hope.
Yeah.
I can't imagine I'm Peter Florence's favorite person.
But do you want to be?
I'm not
not bothered either way. But I think, just to circle back on it one more time, to point out that, I think everybody can agree that a prize, unless it says specifically in the prize T&Cs, this is a career prize, then prizes are single book related. And that's not a complicated.
No, and it's something the Booker is very proud of. It's the prize for the novel. They're very clear about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well done.
Well.
Yeah, because it does take balls to stand up and speak. As you say, of course, the rule is that you don't complain, and there's very good reasons why you don't complain. And some of them are kind of, morally healthy, and some of them are just looking out for oneself. But whichever way you slice it, you don't complain, and that's fine. Yeah. But occasionally, something like that, I think it's quite right, because it could, that little course correction, unmentioned and uncalled out, a slight off course of a millimeter in year 1 will be a mile in year 10. So
yeah. I mean, I can see that. As you're saying that, I am thinking of the opposite thing, that maybe it didn't make any difference at all.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't give myself too much credit, but saving.
Well, I think it takes balls to do anything, because in fact, just to circle back, actually, to go back to the Polari, and John Boyne, no matter which, anyone who stands up and says anything publicly, even coming live here, we're talking live, there's anything that's above the parapet, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a quiet conversation between two people in the publishing industry, or talking about something really big and writing about it in the TLS, or pulling out of a prize. All of these things take a little bit of thought and a little bit of courage and a little bit of,
Yeah,
my God, I'm gonna stand up and be counted. So,
yeah,
um,
that's really true. And the people who pulled out the Polari, in this case, I really don't agree with them and think it had really bad repercussions. But I suppose their thought process will have been pretty similar to mine when I complained, and they will no doubt have thought that they had a kind of moral duty to do it as well. So there we go.
who knows? I mean, I don't know at all. So this is me just guessing. I imagine there were a couple who led the charge, and there were a whole load who just thought shit
Yeah, I mean
and jumped.
that's one of the yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I can't really
I don't know.
yeah.
That's total.
But
Um,
but one thing about all this is the climate of fear is one of the
yeah.
things that I really find troubling, and so much of the fear that surrounds freedom of speech issues at the moment, and fear of saying the wrong thing, and
Yeah. That
the things
phrase,
that can
fear of saying
happen.
the wrong thing,
Yeah.
that's the phrase that troubles me more than anything, that we find ourselves having conversations where we go, I don't know, should I say this? Is that the right thing? Is that because, and, given that we're all talking on a base level of, regular, normal human kindness and care for each other. Once we're at that base level, the idea that there's like, oh God, I'm not sure if I said the wrong thing, that troubles me in the field of art, because literally the point of what we're doing
Mm.
is to express that which is troubling and difficult and moves people and shifts things.
Yeah, very often artists have to say things that people don't want to hear.
We always have to. I mean, unless you're writing, the great Jilly Cooper, who died a couple of days ago, and God, I love her. I loved her, and she taught me so much, and she was a massive influence in all kinds of ways. And I've just reread her very, very first. It was called Emily. It was in her
Right.
single name novels. She did a series of 8, I think, and they were foundational to the 11-year-old self. And, if anybody wants to know what England in the 1980s was like in a certain class, just read that, because it's, for better or worse, you could never publish the kind of storytelling, the language, the choice of words, that in a million years you couldn't publish it now.
Oh, really?
Because no way.
Oh,
I've just read Emily. It took me 2 days. It's
yeah.
super short, because there's a million things which various people, if it was put through any kind of, what are they called sometimes in houses? They're called,
Sensitivity readers, are we talking
there
about
you
Malta?
go.
God. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd wiped it from my mind. Sensitive, they would have had 15 heart attacks from the first page. I mean, there's no way. But the truth of it is that she was telling that it was exactly like what the 80s, her time when she was writing, it was exactly like that. And she leaves it to the intelligence of the reader to judge whether that was okay, that character said that to that other character, or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you must be right about that. I wanna I watched the I haven't read any Jilly Cooper, and I've
Mm.
been my Ellie, who I've been talking about, my much better half, absolutely loves her. Thinks she's brilliant, a ray of sunshine. But
Indeed.
admires the
Oh, the technique, the craft,
yeah, the storytelling
the
skill, and
storytelling.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I watched Rivals, which was just glorious, the TV adaptation. But I'm glad she got to see that Rivals being such a success, and also the kind of that she has had a bit of a rehabilitation. I think I'm right in saying this. Because I remember when in the 80s and 90s she was people loved her, of course, but it was kind of generally accepted opinion, I suppose, was that it was kind of trashy.
I know.
But but um,
Touches the
so often,
slippery.
yeah, and so often the books that are trashy uh, or thought to be trashy, the ones that actually endure and matter and last. I mean, even Charles Dickens faced a bit of that, and
Well, Jane Austen. I mean, come on now. She was. They were trashy novels.
um,
They were. The fact that just because she was using the language of the time, and to our ears, that language sounds much more highfalutin. But at the time, that wasn't highfalutin language at all. That was just, I absolutely think that Jilly Cooper was the Jane Austen of the age. She absolutely
okay,
was. There's no
what?
question about it, because she could tell a story. She had rhythm. She had brilliant characterization. She was absolutely on point describing the environment of the time. They were love stories. They followed a very similar arc, but they endure because she has exactly the same gift of storytelling, because they're well written. Yeah, I'm standing by it, Sam.
Okay, this is good. This is strong stuff. I mean, I can't comment because I haven't read Jilly Cooper. I mean,
Right.
I think Jane Austen, she did pioneer indirect free speech and, changed the form of the novel in all kinds of important ways. But I mean, maybe Jilly Cooper has. And
Well, no, I don't think Jilly Cooper invented anything like Jane Austen did. She didn't invent that form of novel. She learned from Jane Austen.
okay, well, good. Yeah. And I think,
Call her
as with everyone else. And I think the essential thing that's coming out of this is that I should just read some Jilly Cooper, and I will probably
Yes,
really
yes.
enjoy it.
Read
Yeah.
Riders. And what's upsetting as well is when Riders was republished, it was it enjoyed a reprint, relatively recently. They changed the cover. On the original cover, which I have, the hand of the man is on the bottom of the tight jodhpurs woman. And in the reprint, guess what? They moved his hand up. You were like, for fuck's sake, do you really think I can't cope with a man's hand on a woman's bottom? What do you
Yeah,
so irritating.
yeah. A lot of this stuff, it does treat the audience, the readers, like fools,
Like
and
fools,
I think
yeah.
that's one of the things that annoys me. It's the lack of respect for the person on the
Mm,
other end.
yeah.
Because the person who's made this decision, they can understand it and they can cope, and they're not offended, but someone else, some idiot at the other end, might be. But
Is
that
not
very
going to be
often
able
feels
to
like the
cope.
attitude. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's a perfectly apt description of some of the thinking. And again, stand by for a judgment around the Polari prizes that they couldn't. And I understand that in the end they didn't have a choice, but that somehow it was beyond the wit of the readers to comprehend these different positions and even to cope with. And I did have a judgment actually about John Boyne coming out very, very strongly around, a photograph of him in the pub with J.K. Rowling. Not his opinion is his opinion, and he's welcome to it. I don't happen to agree with it, but that's fine. But there was no need for that. That just lighted that threw gas on the fire. And just as I felt that JK, there was no need for her to come out so publicly with these opinions. She welcome to them and have them over a pint with your friend quietly in the pub. But she has a platform. And it was just stupid. It's like you just wasted everybody's time. For me, that, I do have an opinion about it, and I'm happy to now. Here I am being completely public about it. I just think, for fuck's sake, why do you have to? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what good has it done? And I think with John Boyne, when I saw his Irish Times, I think the article, I just felt like, oh mate, really? Did you have to do that? Because now look, like we can all cope with different opinions by authors on a list, but now it's been pushed into some sort of flaming orbit, and then guess what? The few who couldn't cope with this idea set the boat alight, or somebody set the boat alight.
Yeah.
Too
Well,
much.
yeah, probably. I mean, I think this kind of goes against some of the stuff. We've got to be able to accept opinions we
Oh
don't like, and
yeah,
people have got to be able to express them. And I don't think it's good enough to say that J.K. Rowling shouldn't have said anything. She clearly very firmly believes this and believes that there was a problem. So what's she going to do? I mean, I don't like, I don't think anyone likes the way it's played out and the way it's become so
I imagine
so
she doesn't like the way
burdensome.
it's played out. Do you know what I
No,
mean? It's like
and
what she wanted to. Sorry to interrupt, but my feeling is that what she wanted to achieve was certain things around female spaces. Well, that hasn't. Well, to some extent it has to, but it hasn't. She hasn't really got what she. I don't think she went about it by having that kind of public. Like, I can cope with it. I can cope with it, and I think most people can cope with it. I'm just talking about the rationale and the reason, how sensible it is. Which opinions do you share publicly, and which ones do you share privately with your whoever it is going to get you what you want, which for her was private female spaces based on biological definition of a woman. And she just didn't achieve what she wanted. So that's what it just made me tired.
I don't know. To a certain extent, I mean, she did achieve what she wanted. It became possible to have the debate, which was
Yeah.
impossible before. And, one of the things that was so invidious about the whole thing was the fact that you weren't supposed to talk about it, and it became this taboo. And the trouble with taboos, of course, is that people want to knock them down. I mean, this is one of the awful
Mm.
things that's happening with the radicalization of young men in particular. Um, an awful lot of the taboos that society has erected around them are to do with things like race, and
Mm.
they've told them you can't think along these lines, you can't say all these things, and an instinct. It's an instinct. Well, maybe I still have it now to some extent. It's to but certainly as a young man, I was like, well, I don't like your taboos, and it was fine for me because it was Christianity and nonsense that I could rail about, religions and things, and
Mm.
were the kind of the moral fence posts that are being put around me. And now it's so dangerous because an awful lot of those things they're kicking against, it's led them into right wing extremism, and
Yeah.
I'm conscious that I'm starting to pronounce some things that are not really my in my realm as a publisher that I don't know that much about. But I think, what am I going to say? I just get nervous when you say to people you can't say that,
Oh, me too. Yeah.
or
I mean,
or even you can't say that publicly, and especially as a writer, because they've got it, and it's a lot of their. I don't want to give writers roles. I mean, they can
no.
they can do what they want, but I think a thing that writers are very good at and useful. One of the reasons they're so important for society is they do ask these questions.
Mm. Well, but that's the difference, Sam, isn't it? Is that asking. I mean, I absolutely am with you. At no point should anyone be told they can't say anything they want. We are free to speak, and also to have debate and to have critical thinking and different opinions in the same room. The difference for me is that asking a question and having a debate around something, and knowing one's ambition and aim and what we're reaching for, and understanding our platform, all have to come into it. And I have a question mark over her platform and what was achieved, and whether she understood, and also for her own life. I mean, things have gone downhill, and nobody wants that for anybody. So it's not so much. There's no part of me saying she shouldn't have spoken, but I just question what she was aiming at, what we've achieved, and did she achieve what she wanted, and was she asking a question, or was she just coming out and stating something which was, in that way, clearly hurtful, like aimed hurtful? There's a big difference between, I want to have a debate about trans identity and politics, and this idea that I can't say that I think some people are going through a phase, right? That's a pretty contentious thing to say. But I should be allowed to say that because I want to debate about it. I've got question marks around it. I want to debate about it. That's very different from saying, and if I had a platform, this is what so and so shouldn't be allowed in whatever. Because one is incendiary and the other one is curious.
Uh, I mean, but I don't know. Uh, I mean, I don't want to get into the ins and outs of a debate that I'm not really very knowledgeable about, but I'm still very nervous about. I think sometimes you have to be able to say, no, I don't like this as well.
Mm,
And the fact is, you know, Zola and J'accuse, he had to come out and say, no way, this is wrong, this is why.
mm,
And the majority of society, when he first did that, were furious and hurt by it,
mm,
Uh, but he had to say it, and he was right. And that's not to say that everyone that says things that upset people are going to be right, but
no.
there's got to be that possibility. And
Mm,
what would have happened if Zola was too frightened to say it? What would have happened if he was
mm,
taken straight to jail? I mean,
mhm.
what would have happened to Dreyfus? The injustice would have stood, and
Yeah.
so rights have to be able to say things right and wrong. I mean,
Mm,
but of course, we're getting into really murky philosophical waters now, and there are always,
mm,
where are the limits? It's so hard to know.
mm,
But I suppose that it comes back to what you were saying about, hopefully we can have an understanding that we've got good intentions and we're being sympathetic and we're not trying
mm,
to, you know, just tear shreds out of each other for the sake of it. You know, one of the things that so often is raised now is that people have bad faith arguments, but
mm,
do they? I mean, if people are, actually knowingly lying and deceiving, I mean, maybe you can call that bad faith, but this idea of labeling so many things as a bad faith argument, when actually, how do you know it's a bad faith argument? And
mm,
what is a bad faith argument? And it feels, and immediately that puts again, it's this problem where you're arguing with the morality of the person rather than with arguing with the argument. And
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I wish, in my perfect world, when J.K. Rowling decided that she needed to say something publicly, that we'd all been able to have a really interesting, curious debate about it and it not be kidnapped by extreme elements and turned into something where you were either with us or against us, because that has definitely ruined the landscape. And it's a debate that's not over. And I feel I have a child who's genderqueer. And so this is a conversation, and at Good Law Project, we're in constant conversation around this. It's one of their big campaigns that I have all kinds of opinions around the way it's carried out and not carried out and all the rest of it.
Mm.
But what really seems to be missing for me is simply the ability to have what we're having now. It's a difficult, fiery, upsetting, complicated subject. And
yeah,
I wish we could all get to talk about it without being shot down. That's
yeah.
what I wish.
And one of the problems of having these arguments kind of in public and on social media is that they kind of fossilize people's positions and harden
Mm,
them because
mm,
once you've said something, even Twitter feels so ephemeral. But actually, one of the big problems with Twitter, as I see it, is that it kind of people's passing thoughts suddenly become their. You can go back to what
their
someone said
headline.
in 2012 and ascribe that to them. It makes it harder for people to change their minds, and
Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
it harder for people to be wrong. I mean, I hope everyone can forgive me who's been listening to this. I'm sure lots of the stuff I've been saying is not 100% right, or not even 50% right. And
Yeah.
I'm
Likewise.
I might change my mind about it.
Mm,
And I hope if I do realize I'm wrong, I will be able to change my mind. But
mm,
Twitter, it makes it so hard for people to change their mind because it's out there. This is what I think, and it's there. It's kind of in black and white, very literally. And
yeah.
it means all these positions get much more entrenched than they need to be. Yeah, so come off social media and start talking to each other.
To each other, yes, and exactly. And nuance is completely lost. And I think that, I know we've just gone over time, but I think that's such a good point, that it doesn't allow for a change of mind, because I want debate to widen my understanding. That's why I get into debate, because I want to carry on widening and understanding and shifting and going, oh yeah, maybe I hadn't thought about that, and I was wrong about that, and that's the nature of it.
Mm.
And we seem to, I hope temporarily, nevertheless, be in a climate where, again, just to land back where we began, where you have to jump one way or the other, which, and I actually, to talk about my child, my genderqueer child, the fact is that they are neurodiverse autistic, and there's a huge correlation between autistic young people or autistic people and genderqueer. And I've come to understand it's because, certainly for the child in my life, that they exist very naturally in a liminal space. They
Mm.
are constantly on the move. And so all kinds of elements to do with them, gender is just one of them, are also on the move constantly. And the difficulty has arisen in their life, and luckily they're now seeing it for what it is that they're constantly being asked or having to say what they are, and then be cemented in that position. And they
Right.
don't want to be. They don't want, they don't want to talk about it every 5 fucking minutes, and
Right. Yeah.
right? Because, I don't have to talk about my gender. Like, that would be super boring, you know. And also because they're liminal, they're on the
Mm.
move. And
Yeah.
that's what I think is just, like, tragically lost in this. You've got to come out with what you think, and that's the fucking end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Being able to say I don't know is
I don't know. Might change my mind. Yeah.
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 Mm.
I've taken us over time. There's just one more thing. It's going to be quick, I
Okay.
promise. Can we just clear up self-pub, indie pub, indie author? Can you say it loud? Because I couldn't agree more, Sam.
Okay.
Except that, self-pub. For those of us my last one I did by myself. For those of us, we know that self-pub has got a terrible stigma, so we've all tried to get away from it, which is where indie. But some people have got confused between being an independent author and an
Yeah.
public publisher, which they're very much not. Do you want to just lay it out nice and clear?
Oh, can I? Well, I wrote an article about this on
A very
Substack,
good
which,
article about it.
yes, thank you, which I hope does make things relatively clear. I understand why you might call yourself an independent publisher because you're doing all this publishing work, but the fact is that it causes confusion because, independent publisher is a very specific thing within the industry that does things in different ways and, has a different set of procedures and standards and everything else. So needs to be kept separate. And I suppose the other thing I want to say, I mean, it's a shame if there's stigma around self-publishing
There
because
is.
so many people do a good
Do it.
job of it now. And uh, I mean, I understand, there are hangovers from the vanity publishing days and things, and
Yeah.
but I mean, you just need to see how many self-published books that conventional publishers eventually pick up, and
Yeah.
it's a perfectly respectable thing to do, I hope,
Mm.
nowadays. And
It depends what genre you're in. If
yeah.
you're speculative genre, but if you're literary fiction, look out. It's a
Okay.
tough. It's a tough climb. Really.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I hear you. Yeah. If there's any compensation, it's always a tough climb.
I know. See, I know that because I've published in every possible way, from
Yeah.
trad to indie publisher to all the way through. So I know it's a tough climb, but not everybody does.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to be clear, everybody listening, if you're doing it yourself, if you're not comfortable with the term self-publish, you do use the term independent author, but
Mm.
independent publisher, which is what Gally Beggar is and Sam is a very different outfit.
Yes.
Not to be confused.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. What can everyone do to support Gally Beggar?
Oh, thank you. Well, buy our books. Our next book, Telenovela, by Gonzalez y Garcia, has just gone to press.
Exciting.
Yeah, so it's going to be out in a few weeks. It's this wonderful book about Pinochet Chile, and of course it has really important things to say about authoritarianism and complicity, but it's very loving as well, and it's very human and talking about empathy and understanding. He's wonderful at that, understanding even people who do terrible things, and not I stress kind of saying this is right, not forgiving them, but understanding and recognizing they can be human too. But also it gives us some hope because it's set towards the end of Pinochet's regime when that's sort of falling down. So please buy that book, buy our other books, visit our website, gallybeggar.co.uk. I was talking about our beloved subscribers, our buddies, who are so important to us and who keep the show on the road. So if you wanted to subscribe, I would be very grateful and happy. Subscribe to our newsletter. We have a short story prize, which I encourage everyone to enter. Yeah.
Deadline is any minute, isn't it?
Deadline is on the way, beginning of November. I'm having a brain fart. Can't remember the day. It's a very important day.
I think it's November the 6th or 8th or something like that.
Okay, you're better informed than me. Oh my God! But yes, thank you. Yes. So yeah, if you've got a short story, please, we welcome them from everyone, from everywhere. Please do submit. And yeah, it's a prize that it's pretty prestigious, actually. I mean, literary agents take it very seriously. The winners and shortlisted and longlisted authors, lots of them have gone on to wonderful things. And it's great for Ellie and me because it's a really good way to be introduced to writers' work, or reintroduce sometimes. Some people re-enter, and quite a few established writers enter as well, and send us really good stuff. So yeah, it's an exciting part of our annual program. So yes, please enter that.
Good.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, enter the prize and take out a subscription to Gally Beggar. That's a brilliant way to support an independent publisher. Gally Beggar is one of the mightiest independent publishers out there. So, and also subscribe to your Substack.
Yeah.
It's called Sam Substack. Can't remember what it's called.
I think it's called Gally Beggar Pressing Issues. Yeah. But if you look up Jordison, it's an advantage of having a name that no one can spell. When you eventually get to it means I'm one of the only ones. So Jordison. And
find him.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Sam, it's so great to see you. Thanks for giving me an hour and a quarter of your time.
Oh, well, thank you.
My pleasure. I'll see you in the Stacks.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.